Damn it, you can hear the dishwasher in the background. Did I just make a mistake? Did the red thing look better? I don't... It's whatever, though, because I just did all the dishes, and I got, Alfredo sauce on that sweater. It smells like shit, so I wasn't going to keep it on anyway. But did I make a mistake? I don't know. Leave a comment if the red one looked better than this, although this one's way more comfy. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever put on a supposedly clean hoodie and reached into the pocket and pulled out multiple snot rags? Well, that has been the reality of my life for the last 3 weeks. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, I went to a hot yoga class with one of my friends. And afterwards, I left that class feeling not good, Not exhausted, not fatigued, but just bad, Everything felt bad in a way where it was like, I had aches like deep into my bones after that class. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's in that 110 degree room. I don't know if those smells and, mucuses, if they fly through the air with that much humidity in the room. It's possible. But basically immediately after that, I woke up on New Year's Day and had a terrible fever. Flu, one of those. I don't really know the proper classification, so it was one of those. But yeah, I mean, it's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better. I don't feel as bad as I did when I was at my worst, but it's just like, it's been up and down, and then I've gotten way better. And then I decided that I was able to work out again. So then I did that, and then I got worse again. So it's January 20th. I have been sick for 21 days. Is that math? Yeah, that maths. I've always really resisted all the cliche. Most of the cliches I find completely annoying, and I hate them so much. And one of them being, someone says oh, my buddy got a pretty bad fever, and then someone else says, yeah, it's really going around. I don't know why, because it is going around, and that's totally valid because we all live amongst one another. And so it makes sense that we would give illnesses to one another. And so it would make sense that it is indeed going around. But there's something, I don't know, there's something about that saying in general that just it just cringes me out a lot. I don't know, dude. Maybe I'm being ridiculous. It's possible I'm just being ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, dude. Out of all the flu seasons in recent memory, this one has to be one of the most brutal that we've had. It just doesn't make sense. Everybody, usually when people are getting flu, around this time of the year, they're able to take a bunch of pharmaceuticals and they're able to power through their days. But myself and many other people I know have gotten so sick that we're just bedridden for a few days, I spent way too much time in this general area in the last month. It's been way too much. There's a couch right here, and I spent so much time laying on it. And one of the silver linings of being extremely ill and completely incapacitated and incapable of doing anything productive is that you have a free pass to just watch Hulu and Netflix and to just kind of do your thing. So I rewatched Stranger Things, which I needed to do. I watched all 4 seasons of Stranger Things, but the issue was when I watched it, it was when I was smoking a ton of weed. So the memories of exactly what happened in each one of those episodes and seasons were extremely foggy, to put it lightly. So I rewatched season 4. I've been told that season 5 was really, really bad. I don't know if anyone out there agrees. My coworker told me it was real bad. Real bad. And you know what they said about it? They said that Stranger Things became a part of meme culture. So by the time season 5 came around, they were aware that they were a part of meme culture. So they tried to make the show in order to produce clips. So people would clip it off for you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I feel awful, so I apologize for my inability to articulate things as well as I want to. Like, I'm like burning up right now. Like, I'm so hot. I don't know what's going on with me. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like a somewhat busy person, and each episode of Stranger Things is like an hour long. So I don't know if I could justify watching that season. What is there going to be, like 8-9 episodes? It's, you know what? Let's look right now. I got my computer hooked up to the TV. So let me see how many episodes Stranger Things is. Okay. Season 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. And the finale's 2 hours and 8 minutes. Dude, if it sucks, I don't want to, I don't want to do that. You know what the worst part of, like, Stranger Things was? It was, and this is going to sound mean. I don't mean it to sound mean. When I started to, like, see clips of, like, the actors in real life, it made me feel much less enthusiastic about the show. I don't know why. It's just, I don't know. Specifically Millie Bobby Brown, which I have a cousin who says that she's very annoying. I don't know, dude. She's just being herself. She's just trying to live life. You know, it's not her fault, and it's not her fault entirely that she's so front and center in the public eye. You know, it sort of is because she chose to be an actress, but it's not her fault. This show made her super recognizable. You know. But yeah, it's a good show. Season 4 was so gory. There's such high stakes, and there was so many like twists and turns, and like people turning their back on one another, or people coming to crazy realizations. And what? Hopper's not dead? Hopper not being dead was kind of like Marvel-esque, you know? It's like, oh, this person's clearly dead. Oh, they're not dead. Okay. One of the things I really wanted to talk about on today's episode was, it was the movie The Housemaid. You know, when I started reading books in November of 2024, I immediately started reading Frida McFadden, because the first book that I read was this book by Frida McFadden called The Boyfriend, and my grandmother gave it to me. She like ordered it for some reason. She's really into online shopping, so I'll just show up to her house sometime, and she's like, "You want some baklava?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." "Who'd you get it for?" She's like, "I just got it." So yeah, she's always online shopping, and I showed up one day and she was like, "Here, I'll take this book." And it was incredible. It's very approachable for beginner readers, you know. Not to say that it's a children's book, but the verbiage is very easily digestible, and the storylines are like easy enough to follow, but complex enough to keep you intrigued. So I read that book, and I was like, holy, I'm very into this author. So I ended up reading like 18 of her books, I think, maybe 15. And I eventually made my way around to reading the Housemaid trilogy. And one day I was like looking up online the Housemaid books so I wouldn't read them out of order. And so I was typing in, I was like, the Housemaid, and then one of the search suggestions was movie. And I was like, what? No way, dude. So I click on that, and there's a trailer. And, you know, spoiler alert to how I ultimately felt about the movie. It was terrible. It was not a good movie. It wasn't good. You know, I've just become a reader, you know, obviously, like less than a year and a half ago. So it's been very rare for me to like watch a movie after reading the book. In fact, it's never happened. That was the first time last month. So I'd read the book, and it was very descriptive, and when you're reading a book, it's really amazing because you're kind of creating the world that you're reading about in your own mind. So you come up with these ideas. About what the world looks like and what the characters look like, and then I click on the movie, and it's Sydney Sweeney starring as Millie Calloway, and I'm like, what? Because she just doesn't fit, dude. Millie Calloway went to prison for 10 years for murder. She went to prison. She's like a bad bitch, dude. Like she's like aggressive, and she's not afraid to gouge somebody's eyes out, But Sydney Sweeney as Millie Calloway, I don't know. That really caught me by surprise. It just didn't seem like the right casting. And then also another disappointing thing about the movie was that all of the dialogue from every single one of the characters was mumbled. And it's like high stakes, Yeah. There's a lot of very consequential events that happened in that movie where what we didn't need was for the dialogue where the characters conveyed their emotions about these events happening. We did not need that to be mumbled. It was just terrible. And then another thing is, when you're trying to summarize a book, the happenings of a book in a movie, you got to be pretty quick about it, because books are usually longer, and there's usually so much descriptiveness descriptiveness, is that a word? I don't know. So much of the book is describing how people are feeling, what things look like, what a character is thinking about when they're experiencing something. Like, are they thinking about this certain thing that happened in the past? There's so much of that. So much of that gets lost when you're watching a movie, because you're interpreting it in a completely different way, So, yeah, it was just disappointing. And the cuts in between like the dialogue, it was so quick that you never got a chance to like immerse yourself in that world. A perfect example is, have you guys seen The Ritual on Netflix? It's where a bunch of like Englishmen, their friends, one of their friends dies, and he always wanted to go hiking in this place in like Sweden or something. So they go up there. It turns out there's like, supernatural things in the woods up there, and it didn't turn out very well for him. But there's so many times in that movie where it's an uncut shot for maybe 45 seconds or maybe a minute, and you're feeling the suspense of that moment. You're feeling that so hard. Your heart is in your throat, and there's something about those uncut shots where it starts to depict real life, because life is uncut. So I think that's what makes us so present in scenes like that. And there was none of that in The Housemaid. It was just boom, 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 boom. The whole movie felt like a summary of a movie. That's what it felt like. Maybe when the director's cut comes out, maybe I'll watch that. If I really want to waste my time, maybe I'll watch that, and maybe it'll be way better. But I don't think so. And then also I was really confused because it's a trilogy, but I thought maybe they were going to try to summarize the story in one movie. So, but I already read an article that they're already, a second movie is already in the works. So I don't know. I have no idea, dude. It was not a good movie. I was so disappointed. I knew that it was going to be a bad movie. Yes, when I watched the trailer, I knew it was going to be bad then. But I still had a little sliver of hope. But I knew for a fact that it was going to be a terrible movie when the opening scene came on and there was a drone shot of her driving her beat up Honda CRV sedan. There's a drone shot of her driving that, and there was like a pop song in the background. I just knew. I was like, okay, if this is the angle they're going at this with, this is not going to be good at all. It's just, yeah. And not to say that this is a bad thing. This is a great thing. Maybe this is just a flaw of mine. In fact, I know it is. But there's a lot of people in the audience that were like, they were laughing at parts that like shouldn't have been laughed at, or they were like just like, you know, talking out whenever like she had a moment where she like defeated a man. There was a lot of women in the crowd that were like, "Woo, yeah, you go, girl," you know, which is great. I think that's great. But it was just, you know, that wasn't a moment to like laugh, you know, in my view. It was a very serious moment, you know? I don't know. It was just a frustrating experience. And, you know, I'm very grateful. My grandparents and my sister came with me. I was very excited about this movie. Again, not because I thought it was going to be a good movie, but because I'd never read a book and then watched the movie. This was a big thing for me. As I've said in a previous episode of the Verbal Journal, years ago, you couldn't have paid me to read a book, you know? So it was kind of like a treat for myself, you know? It was really awesome. It was super awesome. After the movie, we went to the spaghetti factory, and because I'm a beta vegan vegetarian, at the spaghetti factory, there's not much for us, which there is. You can eat pasta with red sauce and a salad. There's no protein, dude. None of it's gonna actually get you full. There's no avocado. There's no protein. So I went down to Nito Burrito, and I met this like really cool person. You know, I was chatting, and the person who was making the burritos was taking forever. It was so painful. It reminds me of this time I went and visited my sister in Tacoma last year in September, and I went to get a coffee from this coffee shop. And this old man was like making full conversation. He was behind the bar, only person behind the bar. He was making full conversations with every single person in line. And it got to the point where there was like 3 people ahead of me. I didn't get my coffee for like 30 minutes. So we all know how frustrating that is. But anyways, I digress. You know what the worst part about being sick was? It was like there came a point where I couldn't breathe out of my nose. And I'm like a big nose breather. That's kind of like my nature. And so I'd be in bed, and I'm trying to breathe out of my nose because it feels wrong to breathe out of my mouth. I've heard a lot of people who are smarter than me talk about the benefits of breathing out of your nose, and it feels good, you know? A lot of times I wear tape over my mouth when I sleep, and there's like a clarity that you have when you get up from just nasal breathing. Yeah. Apparently there's like, I'm going to butcher this so bad. Apparently there's like, if you were to chop your face off in the front, there's like this whole thing. There's like this huge like cantaloupe size thing, or it's like the size of some fruit. And it's like this whole thing where the air goes through when you breathe through your nose. I don't know. But I do know that if you nose breathing, it like for example, mouth breathing, it like leads to like saggy face, you know? So I don't want that. So I will nose breathe, you know? How did I get there? Oh yeah. So I'm like sleeping, and I'm like woken up by the fact that I can't breathe out of my nose. So I'm just pounding the nasal spray. And eventually my nose gets so dry that I'm like blowing my nose, and I'm like sneezing, and like there's just blood, you know? And as I said, I've been spending a lot of time right here watching Hulu, watching my friend Autumn's Netflix. And I didn't even realize this, but I like projectile sneezed across the room, and then like 4 days later, when I finally came out of that fog of feeling like I was on the brink of death, I looked over at the wall over there. There was just blood all over the wall from me sneezing. It looked like a crime scene. It was disgusting. And then also this morning, I was like kind of tidying up my room, and I looked up on the ceiling and there was blood. So I like sneezed like 6 feet vertically. Isn't that crazy? Oh God, dude. It's so disgusting. For 3 weeks. Dude, like I'm a pretty healthy person. I cannot believe that I've been sick for 3 weeks. It sucks. It really, really blows, dude. Yeah. But, you know, and it really sucks because I haven't been able to, like, work out very much. So I'm just, like, losing gains. But whatever. Like, who actually cares that much about that? It's like, yeah, it's cool. It's, like, really cool to be in shape and to be shredded and stuff. But it's like, but here's my thing about it. Here's like the point of view that I've formed over the last couple of years or so. It's that it's like, because I'm like trying to be a lot smarter. I'm trying to like read and like write more and stuff like that. And I realized that the journey to being physically fit and you're having a body that looks like aesthetically good, it's like very binary. It's like a straight line, you know? The things that complicate it are us. It's human emotions and human distractions and desires, and that's what complicates it. That's what makes it not actually that easy. But the actual journey, the how-to, extremely easy. Eat this, don't eat too much of that, do that, move your body like this, do this, grab a weight. It's like super, super easy. So, but the road to being intelligent is like really complicated. There's so many different ways to go about it. And there's some ways you can go about it that's like a complete waste of time, you know, to some people. Like if you spent 10 hours a day learning about the history of Legos, you know, it's probably not going to serve you too much, you know. But if you spent 10 hours a day learning about all the latest and greatest in neuroscience, you know, that might be pretty cool, you know. Like I know a lot about some things that are a complete waste of time. I know so much about MMA and MMA history. Like I'm a big numbers guy, so I can think about like a lot of UFC numbered events, and I know who fought on it. UFC 274, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje, who's fighting this weekend. I want to chat about the UFC a little bit. Co-main event, Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. Front kick. Ow. Ow. I hurt my foot. Yeah, so I'm just a numbers guy, and I know a lot about that, but guess what? That doesn't really serve me very much. All right? And now that we're on the topic of the UFC, let's look at the card here. I've always wanted to do this. I wanted to do this with one of my coworkers named Bradford, but he's a shy guy. He doesn't really like doing stuff like this, but he knows quite a bit about MMA, so I really wanted to do one of these, you know, fight previews with him. I just hope I can have this out before the weekend. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of worthless. I think I can. It's pretty little editing. I'll probably do it tonight. Let's see here. Boom. UFC 324. Gaethje versus Pimblett. All right, I'm not going to go through every fight because that would be painful for you guys. But first fight that comes to mind, Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. It's like so crazy that Michael Johnson is still competing at the high level that he is. I mean, granted, he's not in the rankings. He's not really fighting people that are ranked, but he's fighting high level guys in one of the hardest divisions in the world, 155 pounds, lightweight. Yeah, dude, he has been knocked out like a lot of times, and I worry for him, you know, about I worry for him about when he gets to an advanced age. What's he going to be like cognitively? But that's not. I'm talking about the fights. He looked really good in his last fight versus not Hernandez, Daniel Zellhuber. That's who he fought in his last fight. And he looks so fast. He's so fast. And he's how old? He's 39 years old. And that speed is still there. The speed and power is still there. It's actually incredible. I would assume Alexander Hernandez is also very skilled, but he's pretty up and down. He's pretty. You never really know. You never really know like which version of him is going to show up. Although at 155 pounds, he's a lot more reliable, because when he tried to go to 145 pounds, it really seemed like that weight cut took a lot out of him. And so he was just kind of a shell of himself. He would start fights really well, but the toll that the weight cut took on him kind of zapped his gas tank, and he just could not sustain a high output. And his durability seemed to be affected as well at featherweight. Next one that catches my mind: Ateba Gautier versus Andrey Pulyaev. Gautier is one of the scariest looking guys ever. He's a middleweight. This is a middleweight contest, and he is like one of the most shredded people I've ever seen in my life, dude. He's got those Francis Ngannou genes. And he's like the Francis Ngannou of 185 pounds, although it could be a little bit too early to tell. But his skills are pretty refined. He's very young. He's 23 years old. And so far in his UFC career, they've given him favorable matchups, to say the least, because they see his potential, so they want to build him up, just like they did with Sean O'Malley early in his career. Andrey Pulyaev, 10-3. Let's look at his UFC record. Let's see. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He won on the Dana White's Contender Series, lost a decision to Christian Leroy Duncan, and he won his last fight by knockout. So, although I watched his fight against Christian Leroy Duncan, he isn't, I don't know, he's not a huge like threat. Obviously he's a professional mixed martial artist, so he's a very dangerous guy, but we're comparing animals to animals here. They're not like us. So I do have a feeling that Gautier is going to finish Pulyaev in the first round. All right. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Deiveson Figueiredo. When Deiveson Figueiredo moved up from 125 pounds to 135 pounds, you sort of realize that he should have been there all along. That weight cut to 125 pounds, it really affected his durability. Not even so much his gas tank, because he had, there was a long run at the end of his time at 125 pounds where he was fighting 5-round championship fights, and he looked great. He looked very, very good in those fights. In terms of his gas tank, he never seemed to get too exhausted. He got a little bit gassed out at UFC 256 in his first fight against Brandon Moreno, but that was because he fought like 3 weeks before, so he had to make that weight cut twice in 3 weeks, which is just like he never should have done that in the first place. But he still looked pretty good. He landed the cleaner shots. He was still a very formidable force in that fight. Although he is, I believe, 38 years old at 135 pounds. And it does seem like his best days are behind him, although he's still a very, very dangerous guy. But he is fighting Umar Nurmagomedov, who is one of the best in the division. He is so, so good. Even his fight against Merab Dvalishvili, that was one of the most high-level fights I've ever seen. His instincts, his defensive wrestling instincts were so impressive in that fight. It was just a matter of gas tank versus gas tank, really. I mean, if it was skill versus skill, if we're comparing skills versus skills, Umar is way more skilled than Merab. But that gas tank was just, he couldn't keep up with the pace that Merab was putting out there. So, 19-1 versus 25-5. Umar is going to get it done. I don't see him finishing Deiveson. Deiveson is extremely durable. He's extremely hard to finish. Petr Yan couldn't do it. Petr Yan's an absolute savage, as we saw on December 23rd, I think, when he regained the title against Merab. I got Umar by decision. This next one, I had to blow my nose. Oh, Jesus. Dude, ugh, God, I have snot all over me, dude. When you blow your nose and it goes down? That's what happened. I have snot all over my sweatshirt now. Anyway, this next fight, this opens up the main card. First ever card on Paramount. I'm so excited. I no longer have to subject my computer to viruses on sketchy websites. And I'm really excited that I don't have to get like the porn pop-ups anymore, because those are a bit jarring when you're not expecting it, But yeah, Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. I think Arnold Allen is ranked number 6 in the world. We haven't seen him since UFC 304. He hurt his hand in that fight, and then he hurt his AC joint in his shoulder, I think pretty sure. And shoulder injuries are really, really bad. I mean, the shoulder is the most complex joint in the body because it moves in so many directions. So took him a long time to come back from that. And he's coming back against an absolute killer. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is ring rust. But that's kind of been the story of Arnold Allen's career. He's kind of come back from really long layoffs. And how old is he? He's 31. That's so crazy. He's only 31. He's been in the UFC for so long. If there was a time where these injuries and extended layoffs were going to come back to bite him in the ass, I don't tend to think that'll be the case at 31 years old, but it could. It could be the case. I don't know. Especially against such a killer like Gene Silva. I'm so torn here because Arnold Allen is such a good fighter, and also he's such a relatable guy. He's just a regular guy, and I just really enjoy him as a person. I love listening to his interviews because he's such a regular guy. When he won his last fight against Geathje at UFC 304, he made a shout out in his post-fight, in his Octagon interview, to his grandmother.
None of those fights happened. I think I'll take his match now, but happy birthday, Nan. Sorry to put you through this on your birthday. We love you, Big Judy. We love you.
It's dude, he's just a regular guy. You gotta love it. But my gut is telling me that Gene Silva is gonna beat him, and I really hope that's not the case. But Gene Silva is just so good. If he wouldn't have abandoned the game plan against Diego Lopez, I think he would have had a really good chance of winning that fight, because he was kind of piecing Diego up, and he kind of showed everybody that he was on Diego's level. I can't even say that it was a tit for tat fight, because there were so many moments when Gene Silva was just rocking him over and over again. But Diego's chin is just, he's unbreakable physically. He's incredible. So it was, that was an absolutely insane fight. Honestly, if you're a UFC fan and you haven't seen that fight, it's on YouTube. It's insane. Gene Silva versus Diego Lopez. And that fight was a number 1 contender fight. If Gene Silva would have won that, he'd be fighting Alexander Volkanovski next week. I say a lot. I need to stop doing that. Anyway, I'm gonna go with Gene Silva by decision. I do think he's gonna win, but I don't necessarily see him finishing Arnold Allen, but I guess it could happen, but I don't tend to think that'll happen. But Gene Silva could finish anyone. He's insane. He's absolutely insane. Derrick Lewis versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Again, you never know with Derrick Lewis either. He's had to pull out of like many fights in the last couple of years. There was one time where he pulled out like on the day of the fight. So yeah, and I think he's 41, 40. He's 40. He's taken his like health, and he's taken like getting in shape more seriously in the latter part of his career. But you just never know if it's too little, too late. You know, like there's a lot of damage that happens to your body when, I mean, like fighting aside, like if you have a terrible lifestyle and a terrible diet, and then you try to and then your body's not prepared for it, and then you just go into like really hard training. It's, it's hard. It's, you got to sort of like ramp into it. Not that I know like a little bit. I've done an MMA training camp on an amateur level, and you got to kind of like ease your way into it. You got to do like kind of a pre-camp before the camp. So I tend to think that Derrick Lewis has not done that for the vast majority of his career, and he's fighting a young, hungry Waldo Cortes-Acosta, 34 years old at heavyweight. It's pretty young. Yeah, and he's been on a great run himself. He's only lost one fight. Oh my God. He fought 5 times in 2025. Whoa. Yeah, he's only lost 2 fights in his career. He lost a decision to Sergey Pavlovich in August. And then he lost in 2023 to Marcos Rogerio de Lima by decision. So, I don't know. Derrick Lewis has the most knockouts in UFC history, but he's also one of the least technical strikers there is. Although he does surprise you sometimes with those extremely athletic flying knees that he throws, or just like switch kicks. It's just like the craziest thing ever. But I don't know. Given how like technical Waldo Cortes-Acosta is, I mean, he wings them too, but he throws like straight shots down the middle. I don't know. I'm going to go with Waldo Cortes-Acosta by finish in the second round. Let's go with that. Next one. Another one where my fandom may be skewing my opinion a bit. Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. Number 3 ranked Sean O'Malley versus number 5 ranked Song Yadong. Is a good fight, And here's the thing about Sean O'Malley's career so far. He was number 11 in the world when he won a split decision over Petr Yan in 2022. And there was that weird fight with Pedro Munoz, who was the first ranked person that Sean O'Malley fought. And, Sean O'Malley was like weirdly hesitant in that fight. Sort of. It was the biggest step up in competition that he had so far. And then he fought Yan, and he performed very well. I watched that fight yesterday. I do not think he won. I do not think that. So, I mean, Sean O'Malley, like, in the rankings, he's only fought Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, and Merab, who are 3 of the best, but styles make fights. So we don't have the benefit as viewers of all this experience watching Sean O'Malley fight all of the best in the world. When you compare his journey with Song Yadong, who's fought so many of the best in the world. And then also I watched some of Sean O'Malley's older fights as well when he was fighting much lower competition. Chris Moutinho, Thomas Almeida. Even when he fought Petr Yan, he was still like so confident because he was essentially undefeated at the time, and he was a bit looser. He threw like different techniques. He threw like front leg teeps. Like inside low kicks. But against Merab, he was so worried about the takedown that he only stuck to like a few different techniques, which makes sense because it's always in the back of your mind. I do have experience. I have experience like a little bit. I have experience like sparring people who I'm very nervous to get taken down by, and it totally messes with you mentally. And you're not as loose. You're not as like willing to throw. You're not as willing to throw like low leg kicks, inside leg kicks, body kicks, you know, and just there's like a sense of looseness and freedom that comes from just like a willingness to just throw anything, you know, and then you start kind of thinking outside the box, and you're just performing better. But when you're tense, you don't perform as well. So it's possible that because Song Yadong isn't the biggest threat on the ground, that Sean O'Malley is going to be a lot looser, and he's going to be maybe more dangerous than he's been in his last couple fights. But maybe losing his last two has affected his confidence a little bit. Regardless, I think this is a good matchup for him. I mean, Sean O'Malley did avoid getting knocked out by Peter Yan, who's one of the scariest strikers in the UFC. So I tend to think that Sean O'Malley will win this fight, but it's a very dangerous fight. Like, Song Yadong is a very dangerous striker. He's so powerful and fast. Yeah, it's hard to see Sean O'Malley finishing Song Yadong because Song Yadong's never been. I don't think he's ever been dropped in the UFC. I saw one of his earlier fights when he fought in one championship, and he was 21 years old, and he got wobbled pretty bad. But it's hard to see Sean O'Malley finishing Song Yadong given the durability and how high level he is as well. Although Sean O'Malley is one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC. So it could happen. But I guess my final prediction would be Sean O'Malley by decision. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah, this is a make or break moment for Sean O'Malley. It really is. I mean, 3 losses in a row at 135 pounds. It's not like the answer is just to go up a weight class. He said after his last fight against Merab, the rematch, he's like, I know I'm stronger than how I felt in there. Which means, is he growing out of this weight class? Dude, I don't know. Is he? I mean, he's 5'11". He's now 31 years old. And making the weight obviously it's not easy, but it's probably just taking out a lot more. It's probably taking a lot more out of him than it did before. So we'll see, man. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. It's like, because, like I said, the looseness, the willingness, like looseness, confidence lends itself to being loose in there and being willing to throw many different techniques and to just kind of enter that flow state. But being unconfident and being gun shy lends itself to being hesitant and, kind of one note, So I still think Sean O'Malley will win. He's very, very high level. But who knows? Yeah, I got Sean O'Malley by decision. For sure. The main event. Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. It is so crazy that Justin Gaethje is an underdog. At least that's what I heard. And I think I also heard that on Morning Combat. One of the best combat sports shows out there. I don't see how you could see Paddy Pimblett as the favorite. Because, I know that the way that he beat Bobby Green was impressive. It was super impressive because he jumped the guillotine and then he jumped the guillotine and immediately went to the triangle, and it was just like it was such a slick transition, and he is such a skilled grappler. Like, the fact that he finished him that way, that points to how skilled Paddy Pimblett is. But Bobby Green just looked bad, Like, he did not look good. And then his next fight, he looked even worse. So, like, we could be seeing, like, a crazy decline of Bobby Green right now. King Green, I guess, if you want to honor the government name change that he underwent a couple of years ago. But I don't know, dude. It's just, I don't know. It's like to some extent, like maybe it could be fool's gold. Obviously, like I said, it doesn't take away from the fact that Paddy Pimblett's very talented and he's an extremely good grappler. But that finish alone, I mean, it was just kind of, I don't know. It was just, I don't know, it makes you wonder. And then his next fight against Michael Chandler, I don't know, I guess you could say that Michael Chandler looked bad in that fight because Paddy Pimblett made him look bad. But in Michael Chandler's previous fight against Charles Oliveira, he just looked so hesitant. And he looked unwilling to enter the fire like he was when he first entered the UFC, which is totally valid. You know, he's been through so many wars in his career. But yeah, against Oliveira, he just didn't look that great. He was a step behind. He was so... His lack of willingness to engage was just surprising in that fight. It was very surprising. And then against Pimblett, it was very surprising how unwilling he was to engage, you know? And Paddy Pimblett looked great in that fight, you know? His striking looked very improved. Yeah. The one thing about that fight that I noticed that really stuck out to me, not in a good way, but I don't think it's going to be tested here, is Paddy Pimblett's defensive grappling, especially his takedown defense. I don't know. It just didn't. Yeah, once he starts fighting those more elite guys, like I really wonder how he's gonna stack up with them on the ground. I mean, extreme example. Like I think if he fought Islam, like he might get crushed on the ground. I don't think he'd really be a threat off of his back, you know, against somebody of that caliber. But in terms of how he matches up with Geathje, I just don't know. As much as he has improved in his striking, I just don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like when they're standing, when they're on the feet trading. I just don't know. The low kicks from Geathje are surely going to be a threat. But in Paddy Pimblett's last fight against Michael Chandler, his low kicks were very, very good as well, you know? I don't know, but there's a part of me that I find it hard to imagine Paddy Pimblett just taking Justin Geathje down at will, because his entries on his singles and doubles, it's not, I don't know, they're not the cleanest, you know? And he doesn't have very high success rate with his takedowns either. He took down Chandler after rocking him badly with that knee, but I don't know, man. Maybe the odds makers are seeing something that I just don't see. But I don't know. I don't see it. My prediction is Justin Geathje by 5-round decision. You know, that's my prediction. Justin Gaethje's 37 years old. He made that ultimatum to the UFC that if he didn't get a title shot, then he was going to retire, which is never good. You never want to hear that. But he's still very dangerous. His last fight against Rafael Fiziev, you know, that was his first fight after getting knocked out by Max Holloway. He still looked very dangerous. Hi, Derrick.
Hi, guys.
That was Derrick, previous guest on the Verbal Journal, creator of Faith Among Darkness.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in his last fight against Fiziev, he showed that he was still one of the best in the world. You know, he looked a little bit more hesitant, which is totally valid because he got knocked out badly against Max Holloway. But he still looked so dangerous. He dropped Fiziev with that uppercut. He's still an extremely dangerous guy. But you got to wonder, at 37, taking 10 months off, he took 11 months off in between the Holloway fight and the rematch against Fiziev, and then he took and then from that fight to this one will be another 10 months. So you just wonder how, at 37 years old, like, what is that going to look like? Is he going to be able to take the damage the same way as he did before? I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting. It's hard to see Paddy Pimblett beating Justin Geathje. You know, he's so unproven. amongst the elite at 155 pounds. I don't know. All right. Yeah. Justin Gaethje by decision. Definitely. All right. That's it for me, dudes. I'm going to make dinner, chill out, just smoke some meth. All right. Take care. This is the Verbal Journal. I'm out.